everyone. Welcome to Measuring Flicks. I'm Karl Hartley.
I'm Max Peterson. This week, we are discussing 2006's A Scanner Darkly. This is episode 2. We were releasing this in a new format. Those of you who are Patreon supporters will have heard our ill-begotten and abortive Season 0, the first 7 movies that we watched.
Let's be honest, it was stillborn. It was very sad.
Yeah. Well, we had some great discussions.
Sure.
It was just a lot of technical problems, flubbery, and then NUI.
Right.
Or
a dash of douchebaggery.
Yeah, it was a touch of us just discontinuing our giving of fucks. And it all fell apart. But here we are in episode 2 of our March Madness series.
Oh, ain't it though?
It sure is. All right, so this is A Scanner Darkly. It's directed by Richard Linklater, starring... Were you surprised by the cast of this?
Not really.
The number of... Well, it is Linklater, and everyone wants to work with him.
Everyone's on board with Linklater. What's he doing? It's kind of like Soderbergh.
We've got, a little bit.
Everyone's get on. So, look, Keanu Reeves.
We got Keanu Reeves. We've got Robert Downey Jr. We've got Woody Harrelson and Winona Ryder. I didn't write down any character names. I've seen the movie a couple times. I've read the book, but I know Robert Arctor.
Right.
But I'm just going to use the actor names
Fair
mostly.
Enough. No, absolutely.
I know Barris. Anyway. One thing I thought was interesting, because we're doing the new format. We're releasing 4 episodes at a time once a month, so that you can binge our episodes, respond online, and then the next month when that comes out, you can binge it.
I'll drop it once, yeah.
So we watched a couple of movies to record today's episode. We watched A Scanner Darkly and The Jacket. Did you notice both by the same production company?
Yes, I did.
Warner Independent, and both produced by George Clooney.
Oh, I missed the George Clooney. Oh, really? How funny is that?
Well, that's I was like.
Soderbergh was a producer on The Jacket as well.
Yes,
well, he wasn't on Scanner, but
no, he was.
But Clooney was a producer on both.
Clooney was a producer on both, so I think
is Warner a Clooney Soderbergh company though? I feel like it is.
Is it? Well,
that thought just occurred to me that if it's Warner it might very well be.
I mean,
one or both of them, kind of like
working together, or like they have like their shareholders or whatever, so they get producer credits on everything that comes through. It's possible.
But I do think it's interesting that they're both Warner Independent.
I preferred my theory, which was in 2005, 2006, George Clooney was just feeling dangerously unhinged and started backing movies about crazy fucking people.
He didn't want to be in them; that he would back them, right? Like,
you know what's weird is George Clooney's first film was From Dusk Till Dawn. That was his first movie.
That was his first, not Sisters, not ER.
No, yeah. Did he get his start on ER or General Hospital?
What was he? General Hospital, and then it was like there was this weird show called Sisters.
Okay, well he went from ER. He was doing like mostly soap operas.
Too much about George Clooney.
You know? Oh.
I know just enough to not know like anything.
The only thing that I know about George Clooney, other than that he's still devilishly handsome, is that he went from soap opera TV stuff to Robert Rodriguez's and Quentin Tarantino's From Dusk Till Dawn
vampire hunter movie,
and it was a calculated move to make him seem like more
grungy and
dangerous. Or to be taken seriously.
Still had the head bob, so.
Right, because he's going from like, I need 2 cc's of Ativan stat to like, I will blow your fucking head off. Like he played like a super brutal. I watched some.
He had a neck tat, yo.
Yeah, dude, and then there's nothing more serious than a neck tat. That shit's forever.
It was his name like Gordon Gekko or something stupid.
No, that was the Gekko brothers.
Wall Street.
What? No, yeah.
This, right?
No, not at all. These are going to go up totally raw.
Awesome.
Which means that we're going to have to be better about staying on topic.
Yes.
All right, so right before we started recording, we were talking about the 2 movies, The Jacket and A Scanner Darkly. The Jacket's episode 4, so you'll get to that in a little bit if you're binging. But you said that you thought that A Scanner Darkly was the lighter of the 2?
No. The Jacket has the happier ending.
Yeah.
Scanner Darkly has the more dark. They're both not like...
A present for my friends.
At Thanksgiving.
A Scanner Darkly... For me, I watched one of the special features, like a making of thing, and what I thought was really interesting is all the actors, when they have interviews with the actors, none of the actors knew if the film was a comedy or a drama.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. They were all saying, like, Woody Harrelson's like, I think it's a comedy. I think it's a comedy, man.
Well, his character is very over the top. He's always very paranoid and on drugs and like sort of the stoner.
Well,
there are some very funny moments in this film.
There are, and Linklater himself refers to it as a comedy, but he says it's a very dark comedy. Whereas when you talk to Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves,
this is a deep drama, right? I mean, they're seeing it as very serious.
They're approaching it as like this is
some of Philip K. Dick's best work, and we're honoring his
right. Yeah. They're like I was just really interested. Obviously, Keanu Reeves' big draw to the character. He actually turned the role down the first time it was offered to him.
Really?
Yeah, and Linklater shelved the project for a couple years.
Was this pre-Neo?
This was in the middle of The Matrix.
Okay.
So the first Matrix movie had just come out. I think he was working on the second one, and Linklater came forward and was like, "Hey, do you want to work on Scanner Darkly? I want you to be my Bob Arctor." And Keanu Reeves had read the book, loves Philip K. Dick, and liked the project, but he's like, "I don't want to do sci-fi." He was doing sci-fi stuff, so Linklater, rather than cast someone else, shelved it, did other I think he did, I can't remember which movie it is, but he did another project, waited for the dust to settle, and then went back to Keanu Reeves and was like, "Have you had enough of a break? Will you do Scanner now?" And Keanu Reeves was like, yeah, I will, totally.
Yeah, I'll totally do Whoa. Scanner Darkly. Whoa.
He's great as Bob Arctor.
I've come a long way with Keanu Reeves, like from completely dismissing him as a dramatic actor in any shape or form.
Right.
Watch his performance in Much Ado About Nothing. It's like, okay. But that's not
and Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh my God, it's so bad. But if you look at his body of work from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, well, actually, what's Eating Gilbert Grape, right?
I've never seen it.
Okay.
So
that's like pre all of his stuff, right? But then he's Bill and Ted, and he's just goofy as shit. And when you're a kid watching Bill and Ted, you're like, he's just the goofy skateboard kid from California, whatever. But then he's put in these parts that are not right for him, like in that sort of jumping off part of his career, like Much Ado About Nothing and a handful of others. But then he starts getting these roles that are right for him, and you can see him come through. Constantine is not one of those, but
you're not a fan of Constantine.
No, but we can go into that later because that was
a
preview of. It was one of the previews before A Scanner Darkly was for Constantine.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, that's really bad. But when
I love that movie. I'm a big fan of the comic book series. Though,
because he came from Swamp Thing, which is one of my favorite comic books. But anywho, digressing.
Yeah. Back on track.
But I think it's when directors and Hollywood in general started to figure out Keanu Reeves and what roles are best for him. I mean, I think one of the best cops and robbers movies is Point Break. It's fantastic.
The original, not the stupid remake.
Yeah, I don't even consider that anything. But Keanu Reeves in Point Break, he's playing a Keanu Reeves type character. He's a dude that, he's scored #1 in his class for the FBI, but he's still sort of like a dude bro.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well,
and they pick him to be a surfer. So once they figured out like where he fits, then you have Neo in the Matrix. He's just some hacker that lives in an attic somewhere, but he's still like that dude, bro. And even you go John Wick, which is some of the best action ever.
Yeah.
He's still sort of that. He's fitting into that mold of what works for him, but he is capable of drama. But go ahead. You said in this particular film, Scanner Darkly, I think that he is breaking out of that mold,
and I think he's very effective.
Yes,
he does it effectively. But before we get specifically to
he's also a cartoon.
We'll get to the rotoscoping. We'll get to the rotoscoping. But Keanu Reeves to me is like Nicolas Cage in a way. Nicolas Cage is everyone,
You're not hating on Nick.
No. There's the joke. We have a Nicolas Cage month coming up. Yes. But there's Nicolas Cage. This is the whole joke. Like he's so bad, he's good. He's a terrible actor. Nicolas Cage is not a bad actor. Nicolas Cage is
bad projects.
He works on bad projects, and there are Nicolas Cage roles where when you put him in that slot, he shines.
Yes.
Raising Arizona.
Oh, perfect.
Kick-Ass. He's phenomenal. Matchstick Men, some people take him to task for, but I like him in Matchstick
That's
Men.
one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, like honest to God, there's movies where Nicolas Cage does very, very Con Air. He does really, really well if you put him in the right spot.
Put the money down.
In a way, Tom Hardy is similar to me. I think Tom Hardy is a chameleon and can play anything.
Sure.
But there are roles where he excels, and and Daniel Craig's the same way, and Michael Fassbender. If you put them in roles where they get to express wounded masculinity, where they are manly men with deep cracks and flaws, they shine.
Yeah.
Just like with Keanu Reeves, 47 Ronin is fucking amazing. He's perfect as Neo.
Yep.
John Wick is fucking incredible, and I think my favorite performance by him. John Wick is my favorite performance by him, but A Scanner Darkly, because I think part of this is informed by the interview that I watched with him. He talks about. Have you read the book?
I have not. It's one of the few Philip K. Dicks that I have not actually read.
I have a copy upstairs. I'll lend it to you at the end of it. But when he played Robert Arctor, he said when they were filming, they found the point in filming where Robert Arctor becomes distinctive from Fred, the narc officer.
Because he splits his personalities, essentially.
Yeah, they even talk about how the hemispheres of his brain basically are dissolved by this drug that he's doing. So he was saying that he originally had a character which was a blending of the two. At a certain point, he talked to Linklater and took some time and separated the characters and then played separate characters. So Fred is his own thing. He has his own mannerisms and tics. Robert Arctor is his own thing. And then in the end, what is the George or whatever? They give him a new name when they send him the new path.
I think that he's three characters too.
Well, yeah, the burned out guy at the end.
Well, four then.
Who's the fourth one? The blending of the two at the beginning?
So, no, because that's what I think is so interesting.
Oh,
with
the husband character.
With well, now it's six. So, so I find it interesting. We're going to talk about the rotoscoping later, but
we can weave it in.
He's wearing the suit, right? So that's
the
one.
blur suit, yeah.
So I think that is one distinctive. That's him together, but that's where the break starts to happen.
That's Fred.
That is Fred.
Yeah, when he's in the blur suit.
Okay, so that is Fred when he's in the suit.
Right, when he's in the blur suit, he's officially like the narcotics officer. He's
Fred.
Fred.
As soon as he takes it off, he becomes...
Arctor again. So watching those different facets, because when you look at Fred is talking. He's a little spacey, but Fred is talking in like he's fairly well spoken, and he understands his job. He understands that he's like, well, I think that there's a possibility that Arctor blah blah blah, and some of him referring to Arctor in the third person is to protect his identity as Arctor. Right. But when he's Robert Arctor, he's sitting on the couch and he's like, wait a minute, man. There's only 9 gears on that bike, and as
an audience member, it's like, is he playing as the agent?
Is he dumbing
playing,
down,
right? Or is he
now Robert Arctor?
Now is he now Robert Arctor?
When he walks out of the building as Fred and is like, I know Arctor. Arctor's a good guy. And as Fred, he's completely disassociated from Arctor. At that point, his
brain has made...
Yeah, me as an audience member, I say to I'm like, he's not thinking objectively about himself. He thinks Robert Arctor is a different person.
Yes.
The other thing I loved, Winona Ryder's performance. Because did you know that Winona Ryder actually did play Hank?
Like the entire time she was Hank?
All of the scenes with Hank are Winona Ryder.
Okay, because there's a really interesting moment when it's at the end when Hank calls and says, she's going to come pick you up.
Talking to it, yeah.
5 minutes. When she's walking down the hallway to change out of the suit, her gait changes. You can tell it's Winona Ryder.
Right.
Because she's moving like Winona Ryder.
Yes.
Even before she goes in the room to take the thing off. It's like she's let her guard down a little bit because she feels she knows what she's just done to this human being.
I think she's also like, in the same way that Fred becomes Arctor, I think she's shifting gears from Hank into, I wish I could remember her name.
Because she says, Hank is... All he cares about is, do we have the evidence? Is this enough to move forward? I don't care about you. You're on your own. Like, that's your whole bag of fries. Right. I don't really give a shit. Give me the information. But with him, it's different. And I think it's because they did have a relationship. When she's with him? Right. Yeah, they had a relationship outside of the... They were like boyfriend, girlfriend as their undercover personas, not knowing
two
that
narcotics
they were
officers
two narcs that didn't know that they were
by
narcs.
The end.
Well, she does because she gets that information, right?
Well, I think that they know. I think that she might have known the whole time because
that was my big question.
When they have the meeting in the restaurant, and the guy's like. It seems like this had been a long game.
Like this was a long con.
To burn him out and get him into New Path so he could get to the gardens.
Since the beginning is my thought.
Right. So I would say that she probably knew the entire time. he was.
I think that's probably a fair and accurate assessment.
Because if you think about it, what is she as her druggy persona? I wish I could remember the name, but as her druggy persona, when they're driving in the car, what does she say? Let's go drop some death, drink some tequila.
Right.
So she's partial. She's burning him out.
Yeah.
She's getting him on more and more pills. She's getting him hooked. I think that she got embedded not to be a standard narc officer, but to be like an in-house handler for him.
That's exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
And then she started getting the feels like, damn it, this is a human being. And that's why that restaurant scene, the diner scene at the end, when they're discussing
that's hard to watch.
It's a heartbreaking scene. She's like, we have just destroyed a human being.
If he had, and she's, I like her.
If he had known,
if he had volunteered, I like that distinction.
But that he wouldn't be effective then in the role that they needed.
Christ, we're just as bad as they are, or something like that, man. And like, I mean, we're not digressing. We're still talking about Winona Ryder.
Yes.
But you watch Stranger Things?
Oh God, yes.
She's fucking phenomenal, or
amazing. Well, Stranger Things is just one of the best things that's ever happened since sliced bread.
We won't go down that rabbit hole, but
she's fantastic in that. And it's because she's playing she's not just the freaked out mom the whole time. There's dynamic.
She manages facets so well.
Yes. And the minor little things that we're not even really picking up on unless you were to like watch so closely.
But you're still getting the effect.
You're still getting the effect of it.
Right.
Like when the phone rings in the Stranger Things episode, like when the phone rings and she's like, there's moments when she's like, holy fuck, is it or isn't it? And you feel, and it's just these small little things that she does with her face.
Ticks. It's little, she smokes the most nervous cigarette I've ever seen in my
God.
life.
That cigarette has no chance, man.
No.
It's just done.
There's not
it's
a prayer. There's
smoke.
ash all over the joint. That cigarette's begging to die.
It's like, hey, put me out. I'm all ash, man. You haven't huffed me and like, oh, I'm just done.
Inch of ash in her hand is tremoring, but the ash isn't falling.
Like this sort of, it's angled down. It's like,
she's so good. Like whatever personal troubles she's had, obviously, she's had some weirdness in her life. She hasn't lost that thing that makes her a good actor. It might make her a better actor for it.
And I thought that there are some so weird moments where the rotoscoping sort of fades away for a minute and like more of the actual human faces
There's
come
bits
out,
where you can almost see the real people.
But I think that of all the her face is the most Winona. It's the most human of all of them.
Yeah, the least distorted.
It's least distorted. I mean, it still gets goofy occasionally, but I think she is the most not plain looking, but the least fucked with. Right.
Well, little factoid. I'm thinking a lot of that is intentional because there's.
I would think anything that's rotoscoped is in.
Well, there's bits.
It's definitely.
Well, they were
by frame. They had to do this, right?
23 days it took to shoot the movie. 18 months. I was going to rotoscope
a year and a half to 2 years to rotoscope.
Yeah,
every frame, right?
To do the rotoscoping. It's the most expensive rotoscoped movie of all time, and actually lost money. It cost $8.5 million. These are rough figures.
Right.
Cost $8.5 million to make, and only made $7.7 million in theaters.
Jeez.
Because it's so fucking weird.
Right.
But before we get off Winona Ryder, I thought this was amazing. It's in the little documentary thing that's on the DVD. She wanted to play Hank. They were gonna, because you never see Hank's face, so they were just gonna get a male actor to do it. And she asked, she's like, "Can I play Hank, please?" And Linklater's like, "Sure, yeah, go for it." So she worked with Robert Downey Jr. and Woody Harrelson, and they, like the three of them, picked several large framed male actors, and she learned to physically mimic those other actors' physicalities. I think Marlon Brando was one of them, but she picked like big guys and aped that physicality. So when she's behind the desk and she's lounging, when Hank is like, filling space, that's Winona Ryder in a green suit filling space, playing a male actor physically.
Fantastic.
That's work, man.
Yeah. That is dedication to your craft.
That's the stuff I like. Because you can go to a movie and be like, wow, what a great movie. But when you learn the work,
it's the things that happen behind the scenes, the preparation that an actor does, that is everything. It makes the audience will never know that is a thing unless they watch the documentary or but it's those hours of preparation that you're never aware of as an audience member that make all of the difference.
Yeah.
For that one moment of
like you could have gotten a guy to play Hank.
Sure.
And
but knowing that it is her makes a difference.
Right. And I almost feel there's two moments. You say I didn't catch her gait change.
Yeah.
I caught something slightly earlier when she's Hank is talking to Fred,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because Robert Arctor's not really in the room. At this point, he's almost totally gone.
Yeah.
There's a moment where Hank lights a cigarette, and Hank, like, there's a very specific Winona Ryder, like, head tip, and in the moment when she lights that cigarette as Hank, all of the blur suit features become female. In the moment that the cigarette is lit, it's all the face pieces are all female for just a flash. So there's little shit like that in there, man. This movie, we can get into more specifics later, but I want to talk about the feeling that this movie gives me. I watched this movie for the first time in 2007, I want to say.
Itchy.
Something with that bug scene in the beginning is great when he's like scrubbing the dog. But I saw this movie for the first time in 2007, so like a year after it had come out. I'd read the book, and the book gave me a really weird feeling. Like, the book made me feel kind of like spaced out and disconnected, that sort of like disconnected feeling that the movie talks about.
Yes.
When I watched the film, I watched it at my grandma Linda's house. And I kid you not, I had the same experience yesterday. No, or not yesterday. I watched this the day before. But when I watched it this last time, I had the same feeling. So I think this is an actual feeling that this movie causes in me. I felt disassociated from the world around me. Mm-hmm. Like the world felt unreal after watching this movie. It's like about a 2-hour movie.
Yep.
And it's all rotoscoping. And rotoscoping is very weird. It creates an uncanny valley
I was going to say uncanny valley.
But it's not a consistent uncanny valley. It's a weird unreality that feels
and it's
real.
not like an on and off switch. It's like reality, not reality. It's this weird blurring. It's a very
of the
slow,
two,
like elasticity going on there.
Right. So like after I watched this movie, I walked around the house, and I like made coffee and I made my lunch and I went to work. But like that whole time, everything felt fake. It felt like I was surrounded by flats. It's very weird. And the first time I saw this movie, I was that way for a week. Like it.
Were you doing D?
No. I was actually straight edge when I first saw this movie.
Nice.
Like coffee, 1 cup of coffee a day, and like no. I don't take alcohol or like.
I don't take alcohol.
Yeah,
right,
Oh, what are you over there with your marijuana cigarettes? What a bunch of burnouts you guys are. I'm gonna go run
Losers.
6 miles. Right, but no, I was totally straight edge, and like yesterday, I think I had a beer while I watched it, but it wasn't like I was sitting there like dropping acid and smoking, like ripping the bong, but like for about a day, I felt like I was like trapped in a small tiny bubble in my head, and the world wasn't real. This movie fucks with me when I watch it.
I was that way with Waking Life, which is another Linklater movie.
He's such a weird director. But he's a good director. I feel sort of the same way upon watching it, just like your brain is like mushy. You know, it's like, ugh. Well, I think part of it too is I was talking to Bird about it, and Bird is my wife, for those of you who don't know, not that none of you don't know that. But I was talking to Bird about it, and like if you try to tell someone the plot of this movie,
you can kind of do it.
There's like a dozen stories. Like, think about it. There's like a 7-minute scene where they're all sitting on the couch, and Robert Downey Jr. brings in a bicycle, and he's like, it's an 18-speed bike, and Woody Harrelson points out that there's only 9 gears. And then
maybe 6 gears,
or it's like 8 or 9 gears, but they can't decide, so they're gonna count. And then like Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, there's a long scene where they're talking about a bicycle, and then there's not
paranoia sets in, and their brains, you can tell the dysfunction that this drug is taking onto their brains, where they're like, the paranoia is so great that they're actually like, well, they're making shit up in their brains. Like, well, they must have, somebody that didn't know how to work on bikes left the gears on the floor somewhere. And now they're going to charge me for the gears.
Right. He's like, I'm going to go get, he's like, clearly they left them off. And he's like, well, let's just go get them. I know, you idiot. They're going to try and sell them to me. Right. Sell me the extra gears.
Which they should have sold to me in the first place.
I think in the original sales price. Right. But I think one of my favorite moments is when they come, their car breaks down.
Yeah.
They're driving, and the return spring on the gas pedal or whatever fails. So they're like, oh my God, we almost died, man. And they're getting towed back to the house, and Robert Downey Jr. goes, I left, there will be a surprise for anybody who's trying to get into our house. I left the door unlocked, and I put a note on the front door that says, like, the door's unlocked, come on in. So they get there, and they're like searching the house, and there's a hot roach in the ashtray, and they're like, oh my God, someone has been here.
Right.
Someone's been here, and they smoked a joint, man.
They're
and then
planting evidence. They're planting drugs on us.
And Robert Downey Jr. goes, I think it's Robert Downey Jr. is like, that's probably a narcotics officer who came in here. They're planting drugs. Oh my God, there could be drugs all over the house. We're going to have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And then
check the outlets for bugs and all the shit.
Immediately they're like, but we can't. No, man, we can't get the drugs. Because if they catch us and we're running around all crazy
with our drugs
in our hands, we can't even pretend that we didn't know they were there.
Right.
We can't do anything.
They're going so far down the rabbit hole in their own brains.
And then they go and look at the cameras, and the cameras are all fucked. Like, they didn't record anything, and they're like, oh my God, this is more sabotage, man. We've been sabotaged by the narcotics officers who came in here.
Woody Harrelson, we're so fucked,
man. We're fucked, man. And then Robert Downey Jr. is like, well, there's one thing you could do. And Robert Downey goes, sell the house.
Yeah, it's like...
And they start...
You can sell it with the drugs in the house. You might increase the value.
Increase the value. They're like, unknown quantities of high-end drugs secreted all throughout the house. And Winona Ryder comes down. She's like, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
What's wrong with you guys?
He's like, did you smoke a joint? She's like, yeah. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're immediately back down to baseline. Yeah. But I pointed this out to Bird. They're actually completely right. Winona Ryder is a narcotics officer. She came in and smoked a joint. She erased the cameras that Robert Downey Jr. had set up because she was checking the actual cameras that the narcotics officers, the DEA, had set in their house.
I never pieced that together. They were
their
correct.
paranoid fantasy is 100% accurate. But they're just being paranoid, but they're fucking right.
They're right. Oh, that just ruined my entire life.
The amount of layers to this film, when you really start picking at the threads, it goes back to
that's in the writing of Philip K. Dick a lot, too.
100%.
I mean, well, Linklater took a pass. It's his screenplay based on it. But, I mean, I haven't read
He worked with two of Philip K. Dick's daughters on the screenplay.
So it's closer to the source material than, say, Blade Runner, right?
Much more so.
Like, because that's just like a shadow of the book, right? It's
the Blade Runner's...
The words and the names and the places and times are the same.
Well, Blade Runner, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is a short story.
Right.
And they extrapolated it into an almost 3-hour film. Minority Report, kind of the same thing. Minority Report's a short story. Yep. Total Recall's a short story. And they just blow...
Overdrawn at the Memory Bank is one of my favorite short stories.
Overdrawn at the Memory Bank?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Philip K. Dick to me is... I think he's one of the most underappreciated. I mean, he has a cult following, but I think that as far as science fiction writing goes, he's one of the top 3. Philip K. Dick might be my favorite sci-fi writer.
Yeah.
Can you think of a better science fiction writer?
Arthur C. Clarke.
Okay, yeah.
I put the 2001-2010 as 2 of the best, and Songs of Distant Earth, actually.
I forget the name of the author, but Forever War and Forever Peace are pretty excellent. There's a lot of great speculative fiction, but for me, there's something special about Philip K. Dick.
Ian M. Banks too, but he's really overwordy.
Well, Dick sort of he creates and sustains a certain like unbearable paranoia.
Yeah.
Where when you finish a lot of his books, I just read earlier this year, Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said, which is very similar territory to Scanner Darkly. And this concept of you wake up one day and you are not who you thought you were, and your entire life is different, and everyone is now out to get you, is the perfect Philip K. Dick. This book at the end of the movie, they have that like the list of the fallen. Phil in there is him.
Oh shit!
Permanent pancreatic cancer from his like extreme drug use. He had like pretty severe mental breaks caused by excessive drug use. So when you look at his later work, it's all people who wake up one day and their whole life is just gone, and now they're different people and extremely persecuted and paranoid. And I think that it's almost like watching Philip K. Dick. It's almost like autobiography with a sci-fi veneer. You know what I mean?
No, yeah. I mean, that's why do we write?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's we tackle large questions here.
Exactly. We don't. Yeah.
But I don't know. One of the moments in here that really always sticks out to me is when Robert Archer is sitting in his perfect house with his wife and 2 kids, which may or may not even be real.
That was my was he ever actually that father with the wife and 2 kids?
Well, he has that thing where he's like, I've got 2 little girls, like, very little, and he does the same hand motion like it's a practiced thing, like it's just
I think it's part of his cover,
a rut or a tick, and then Hank goes, I don't think you do. You're not supposed to. And there's like this moment where you can see Robert Archer be like, wait,
what?
Wait, do I not have a wife or kids? And they never explain it. It's never. I've always taken it. The first time I read the book and saw the film for the first time, I took that as fact. This time I was like, I don't know if he does.
Maybe it was part of his cover
that he accepted because he's so addled by drugs.
Yeah, or.
Well, there's such a sliver of truth to that. Like, I banged my head on a cupboard.
And the sharp unexpected pain jarred his senses back to like, I'm not happy.
Yeah, and he's like, nothing's ever going to change.
I hate my wife and kids.
I hate my wife and kids.
I hate my house. I hate my lawnmower. I hate the yard.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
And he throws it all away.
Throws it all away.
To become a narcotics officer or something?
Right.
I think he was probably working in law enforcement and took this more dangerous assignment to just like to get out of the rut.
Right.
But I wrote down a note, and it's like that great and this will get a little bit heady, but
sure.
I read have you ever read Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique?
No.
All right, it's like a seminal feminist text from the 60s where she basically postulates in the 60s all of these women who were married, had 2 kids, two-car garage, beautiful houses, were going to their psychiatrists, and they're like, I'm desperately depressed. I feel like I want to kill my children, and I'm so nervous all the time, and I cry for no reason, but I have everything that I could ever want. And Friedan postulates, that's what she calls the feminine mystique, is this big fake trap that society's made. Says if you check all these boxes, you'll live a happy life. Right. But, it's like that Fight Club territory of like, you are not your shiny fucking toaster. You are not cleaning your floors every day and how well you vacuum. You're a human being with like needs and wants. And I wrote down, what if perfection is our human hell? Which is, I think, what he's driving at here. Yeah. Bob Archer, he's like, does anyone want some popcorn? And he's having his middle of the day Heineken or whatever. Right? And then he bangs his head on the cupboard.
The cabinet,
it's like a primal moment. It's like a sudden danger that you weren't expecting. Yep. And all of a sudden,
all of those things that are human about you come to the surface.
Right. Yeah. All those, you get all that chemicals, that lizard brain activates. Like, let's deal with the danger. And you look around and you're like, what fucking ivory prison have I built for myself?
What planet am I living on right now?
Right, exactly. Yep. So that to me is like the thesis of the film, and just how far he falls is just incredible. I wrote down death cut with meth. Did you catch that at the beginning?
No.
And they're like, so what's Robert Archer's drug habits like? He's like, I don't know, a couple of capsules of death cut with meth during the day. Nothing too right. So he's doing like this super addictive like.
I wonder exactly how much like. Because all of his friends, right, Woody Harrelson and Robert Downey are obviously taking a lot of drugs.
Right.
I get the feeling like he is taking more drugs than all of them combined.
I mean,
but you don't.
He takes them at work several times.
He's constantly popping these pills.
Right, 2 at a time.
And at work, in the sheriff's office, just like he doesn't give a fuck. He's like, yeah, I'm taking these drugs, whatever.
Right, he's in the headquarters watching himself, and he just takes 3 capsules.
Yeah.
Which is like the dose he was scared to take not 20 minutes earlier in the film. He's like, no, 3 is too much.
3's too much. He's just like, whatever.
He's like, go for it. The cinematography, I wrote down disguised by the rotoscope.
Yeah.
Because when you look at how this is actually shot, like the angles, and the close-ups of the face, and like some of the POV shots that we get, especially like the druggy type stuff.
Yeah.
The cinematography is amazing, and I want
to see a dry cut.
You can see some of the scenes that they're shooting on the special features. Okay. Did you ordered the DVD?
No, I just rented it on Amazon. I couldn't find my copy.
Gotcha.
But buy everything that we're doing. But
sure, when you get a chance, you can watch that and see what it was like. But there's a fucking awesome moment when the doctors are talking to him, and they're like like telling him, oh, your right brain and your left brain are not communicating with each other. And the female doctor, they get a close up on her face, like a not quite close up, but like a medium shot on her face, and she's like, "Did you ever buy her those?" Or like, "You should buy her flowers." And her face like warps a little bit, and then like settles back to true. I think the use of rotoscoping to like bend reality, watching this movie is like watching it through Robert Archer's eyes, like this drugged out.
Yes. I don't think this movie could have been done any other way.
No, if you shot this straight, this movie would not be nearly as compelling as it is.
No, I think it would be darker.
Definitely. definitely. I mean, and it would
to
be
the point where it'd be almost unwatchable, like really just dark.
Well, and the other thing is like you could do.
And how do you do the suit?
I don't know how you do the blur suit. They'd do it CG today or whatever.
Oh, probably, yeah.
If they'd done it in 2007 or 2006 when it came out, it would have fucking
Oh my God,
bombed.
horrible.
Horrible CG. Just like
They got zero CG, man. Like, it's really bad.
PS1 CG.
Oh, God.
But,
The Resident Evil CG.
yeah, exactly. It'd be like 8-bit.
Yeah.
But when he's talking to the doctors, there's that bit where it's the white doctor and the black male doctor.
Yes.
And then he turns back, and it's the female doctor, and it's not the guy anymore. And he's like, wait, what the fuck?
What the hell's going on?
That, I think this is super cool. When they're telling him about how the hemispheres of his brain are separated, Linklater framed the shot so that Keanu Reeves' head
Is in the middle of the
is
two.
in the middle of the two, and the white doctor's the same and is talking normally and fine, and the black male doctor is the other hemisphere of his brain and is saying slightly weird stuff that's like overlapping the stuff that the doctor on the left is saying. And then when Keanu Reeves gets up and turns back, he sees reality again, and it's the female doctor. And I thought it was just a beautiful visual metaphor for the hemispheres of his brain
Not
fighting
really
each other.
communicating very well.
Because they talk over each other, but every once in a while, there's that recurring gag where they sync up and say the same thing at the same time.
Like, yes.
Yeah, they'll say like exactly or of course simultaneously, but other than that, they kind of butt up against each other
I
or
noticed that as well.
interrupt each other. And I think that those two doctors are just this. Oh my God! just
Perfect
a perfect
representation.
representation
Yep.
of his separated brain. I thought that was fucking great. The last thing that I kind of wanted to talk to see what you thought. Did you want to talk about the commentary that this film makes on the drug war, especially given what's happening now in the States?
Well, it's like not a whole lot has changed.
Right. Well,
since 2006.
We're getting back to. Jeff Sessions is talking about like just ignoring state legislation that's making marijuana
legal. Yeah.
So like he's talked about like going and shutting down medical marijuana clinics in states where medical marijuana is legal because it's federally illegal. We're going back to this, and didn't he said about the opioid epidemic? You know, if you're in pain, just take an Advil.
Shut up.
That, I swear to God, I'm not. I think it was either Sessions. It was definitely Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, that's going to help an amputee or somebody that suffers.
Or someone who's already hooked. He's like, oh, if you're hooked, you know, like just stop taking your opioids and start taking Advil. Or like, oh, if your doctor tells you to take opioids, just take your Advil. Like people who've had like open heart surgery where they break your ribs. Or, you know, cancer patients who are like super brutal chemo. Oh, well, maybe they could use marijuana, except he wants to make that illegal too. So we're going back to this weird Nancy Reagan, just say no.
It feels like the Reagan war on drugs era coming back around again, very much so.
It does. It's like,
and this movie, Scanner Darkly, is putting it not quite that 1984 Big Brother is watching, but in that
realm.
vein, right? Like,
yeah.
Because, I mean, we all carry our government listening devices around with us in our pockets, right?
Right.
So it's
I just heard today, I don't know if it's factual, but I just heard today that the NSA has voice recognition that they can, any phone that's connected to cell service or the internet, they can use as a microphone, and their voice, it sounds like a crazy conspiracy from Scanner Darkly, but their voice recognition is more accurate than face recognition programs now. So
interesting. Your voice is like a fingerprint, though, when you look at it on an oscilloscope and all that.
Definitely. So what I was hearing today, I heard it on the Joe Rogan podcast. Yeah, not an oscilloscope, but like waveform pattern. Yeah. What they were saying that anytime they want, they can just activate anything with a microphone that's hooked up to any sort of signal that can transmit any kind of signal and just listen. And by voice patterns, they can tell everybody who's within the range of that microphone. That's fucking spooky shit, man.
Yeah, that's some spooky shit.
But the whole war on drugs thing, what I was thinking is this isn't even like a 2016 movie.
No, this is
2006.
Right.
This is
over
a decade ago.
When was the book written?
The book was written back in the 80s, I want to say.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me, but the book was written decades before that. And what are we talking about? We're talking about there's a number that they give in the opening scene where he says 20% of society can be considered addicts. I think the addiction numbers to opioids are similar. Now
That makes sense. I mean, like legal opioids too.
Yeah, it's not like
we're not prescription drugs are probably
right.
I don't
like
want to wax political on the podcast.
We
but
don't have like 20% of. I think it's an okay place because the art is commenting on life.
Oh, okay,
and I think
fair
that,
enough.
I
Yeah.
think that part of what makes this movie so powerful, like this movie, 1984. Why are people watching Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale? Is because
it's
right
because
now
that's commentary on what's happening.
it's resonating with people where they're watching this art that has become timeless, or in a weird way, it's that thing like if we don't pay attention to the mistakes of the past, we're doomed to repeat them. We're not listening to the warnings that our artists.
You want to know what's really crazy?
What?
So we're talking about the war on drugs being similar to how it was and repeating itself from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, right? I'm currently in a production of Midsummer Night's Dream, and some of the dialogue that I say, like to say truth, love, and reason keep little company together nowadays, that line was written over 400 years ago.
Oh, and we would. What do you mean? As a society, we haven't learned from that.
Okay, seriously, right? It's like, what the fuck?
That's got to be a trip for you. Like reading Shakespeare and being
It
like,
is.
oh,
It's like, oh.
So Shakespeare predicted the what Twitter would become eventually.
Pretty much, yeah.
He knew exactly what Twitter and Facebook were going to devolve into.
Exactly.
It's I don't know. It's in a way it's frightening, but in another way
we're always we're doing the same thing. I mean, we humans are humans, right? And as we grow and mature, we go through similar patterns, right? So it's not we're sort of doomed to repeat history over and over again, or to fall into the same
unless we can maybe break out of the rut.
But how do you break out of being human?
That's are these intrinsic human qualities?
I think that probably some of them are, yeah.
Well, I think that a lot of it could be. Well, I think a lot of it comes down to tribalism in a sense. Like we have two parties, and there are some there's some scientists who don't think that that's an accident. We think that there are people who are predisposed to be conservative, and there are people who are predisposed to be liberal. And as long as we have those two things, as long as we have just conservatism and liberalism with no middle ground,
right,
you'll never have moderates, and it'll be hard to have.
We're not allowed to be human.
Measured discussions. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. But obviously, I can't speak for you.
Sure.
Maybe you're alt-right, but
no, are you kidding
I
me?
assume that we are both about as left as you can get.
Fairly left.
Lefty.
I bend left.
I don't know, but like just watching this movie, it was like, look at what we're talking about today, and look at what we were talking about then, and look at what we were talking about when George Orwell wrote.
I was going to say Orwell, 1984.
Look at what
that speech at the end.
Yeah.
Of 1984 is predicting our future that we're currently living in.
I don't know. But then again, who knows?
Self-fulfilling prophecy too, maybe. Who knows?
Maybe 2 hours of rotoscoping and paranoid drug movies have just made us paranoid. Who knows? Do you have anything else? I have a fun fact I wanted to
go ahead. No, I'm good. Just overall, in general, I think I probably watched this movie the first time about when you did, about a year after it came out.
Yeah.
And just I didn't quite understand it. I was watching it with a group of people that weren't necessarily into what the movie was. They were sort of like, oh, I don't like this movie, it's stupid, whatever, so I couldn't really focus in on it. But being able to watch it on my couch by myself today, over 10 years later, I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I think it is a must-watch movie. I mean, it's certainly one of the best adaptations of a Philip K. Dick story or book.
I think it's the best. I think Blade Runner is amazing, but I don't think it's necessarily an adaptation so much as it is. It's a beautiful thing, but I think it's more inspired by than adapted from. I think this is the best adaptation.
And I think the fact that rotoscoping has a hand painted look to it, it doesn't look dated. In fact, if anything, I think if you were to watch this movie 40 years from now, it won't feel dated because of the nature of how it's filmed.
It looks like a choice rather than like the limitation of...
It's like a cartoon. If you go back and look at a cartoon from like Snow White, I mean, you can't really...
Yeah, Snow White.
You can't tell that it was drawn in the 30s or the 20s or whatever.
When you see shitty CG, you're like, that
was 90s.
You're like, oh man, that was when they didn't have CG figured out. But when you watch The Lion King, you're like, oh, this is what they were doing at that time.
If you didn't know any better, could you say what year The Lion King was?
Probably not.
Made?
Snow White, you can pick it out because it's got that softer. It's got the.
But that could have been
Disney
a style.
It's true.
Choice.
Well, that's what I think.
2010, which is what makes this movie so interesting.
I think that's what this looks like. This looks like they had a style in mind and they were able to make it happen. Bird and I went and saw Black Panther yesterday.
Oh, sure.
They have 3 rotoscoping teams on Black Panther.
Really?
Yeah. I only noticed because I just watched Scanner Darkly, but we were watching the credits waiting for the after credit scene, and I'm like, oh my god, look, a rotoscoping team. And then you get to the next studio, and I'm like, holy shit, another rotoscoping team. So they're still using this. It's probably like little touches here and there to add vibrance or create a weird texture.
Remove wires, things like that.
Or whatever, but it's still happening. They still have rotoscoping in 2018.
That's amazing.
I really dug it. But the thing I wanted to point out, which I again found out on that cool documentary, was Winona Ryder's godfather was Timothy Leary. For those of you who don't know who Timothy Leary is, he's a 1960s countercultural figure. He's the famous Harvard professor who did all of the tests with LSD.
Oh, shit.
That guy, yeah. He was good friends with Philip K. Dick.
Of course he was.
Winona Ryder remembers specifically like her godfather talking about Philip K. Dick, and like she's seen letters that from Dick to Leary. So I thought that was kind of interesting. We've come. There's like a weird like closing of the loop type thing where she's in Scanner Darkly.
But not a passing of the torch, but more of a closing of the loop.
Yeah, this is a weird movie for me. Like final thoughts. Mm-hmm. I highly recommend it to everybody. It's weird, it's dark, and depending on your mood, it's either hard to watch or
you can find the comedy in it.
Right. It's a weird, shifting, changing movie. But it really is one, and I wouldn't watch it every year. But
no, certainly not.
No, definitely not. It really messes with you. But this whole month is gonna mess with us. It's all movies about crazy people.
Yep.
But I highly recommend it, and the book especially, the Philip K. Dick. It's called A Scanner Darkly. You can find it everywhere. I checked out my copy when I was getting ready to record the podcast, and I had left a Post-it note. 17-year-old me had posted a Post-it note to future me in the front cover that says, "This is the best book that I've read in the past 5 years. Probably one of the best 3 I've ever read." And then there was a copy of my father's book. He didn't want me to read it, and my dad has a college football timetable, like their game schedule on there. But there's weird games are marked with like strange lettering and shit.
Oh, that's weird.
It's weird, yeah. So anyway, you should read the book. You should watch the movie. I highly recommend it. Robert Downey Jr., who we didn't talk about is phenomenal.
He's playing Robert Downey Jr.
He really
pretty flawlessly.
He is, but there's
some Iron Man in him.
Because
he is Tony Stark.
Have you heard of his method for remembering his lines?
Mm-mm.
I think that part of the Robert Downey Jr. thing
is how he
memorizes his lines. What he does is he writes all of his lines as one giant run-on sentence. Right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then, so he'll memorize the lines and then write them out from memory as a giant run-on sentence and check them. Then, after he can do that, he makes it a giant acronym. Only the first letter of every line. So if it was like, to be or not to be, it would be TBONTB. And if he can't tell you what each of those letters stands for, then he hasn't memorized his lines well enough.
That's a great process, actually. I might steal that.
That's how he fucking does it. So when you hear that
sort of run on and quick.
When he does his lines, there's a thing that he does that I don't really see other people do unless they're kind of copying him, or like you hear it when people do imitations of him, where he rattles his lines off so fast and flawlessly and throws them away offhand because they're so in his head.
He's not even thinking about them.
No, not at all. So he's throwing them off. That's that natural Robert Downey Jr. thing.
Right.
Where he's just throwing his lines off, and it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter, man. That's where that comes from. Is he has it so well, so in his bones.
I'm gonna have to write all my lines out tonight now.
I guess, right? Yeah. So this movie's definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely.
It'll fuck you up, but that's what we're trying to do to you this month.
This month is about fucking you up.
All right. Got anything else?
No, that's it for this one.
All right, cool. Well, I'm gonna try as we did last episode, and we'll do from every episode from now on. I'm gonna come up with a new fucking cheesy, shitty outro. So here we go. For this week, I'm gonna say, or for this month, because we're doing them in fours. Well, the reels have spun down and the lights are coming up, so we'll see you next time.
But that works.
That's not bad, right?
That's pretty good.